Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Business Innovators Radio. This is your host, Constant Taylor. Today, we have a very special guest on the show, and they're going to share some very exciting information with us. So, if you're looking to increase your personal and professional effectiveness, then you've come to the right place. Our special guest today is Liz Wainger of the Wainger Group. Elizabeth has been speaking professionally for over 10 years. The primary content that Liz speaks on is communication and communicating value, being a spokesperson for your organization, and having an important message. Liz has spoken both nationally and internationally and is based just outside of Washington, D.C. She has a book coming out soon entitled, "Just Because You Have a Mouth Does Not Mean That You Are Communicating." Liz, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Constant. It's great to be here.
Glad to have you. We'd like to kick off the show by asking you if you could share with the listeners a little bit about your business and the types of services that you provide.
Sure. We like to say that Wainger Group is a different kind of PR firm, and what we are focused on is dispelling the communication fog that often engulfs organizations inside and out. This fog prevents clients and customers and partners and other external audiences from really understanding an organization's true value. And the same fog kind of creeps its way inside and prevents internal teams from fully delivering on that value. So we work with executive leadership and their staff to have the right conversations internally to develop sound and compelling messaging that reflects their true value that they provide. And then we work with them to create and implement the best communication strategies. And we work with companies and nonprofits and government entities. And all of this is really aimed at improving their communications to grow their revenue and their influence.
Okay, great. Now, let's talk about the importance of having a message. To whom do you communicate that to, and how do you help them develop that?
Well, really this starts at the top, but it's important that it may start at the top, but that it's that a good message and strong message is understood and embraced by everybody throughout the organization. And where good messaging starts is really understanding who you are as an organization. What it is that the kinds of problems you solve, the difference that you make in the world, and how you do that, how you're different from other folks. And then, a good message, brings people along with you, and there's a call to action. So you're not what most enterprises tend to do is they speak in what I call list speak. When asked about what their company does, or they'll tell you, well, we provide, mission critical systems. We provide this service, we provide that service, and we're the leading provider of it, right? Mm-hmm. But that doesn't tell me anything about that. That's very nice, but that doesn't really relate to me. So a good message speaks to, I help you solve a certain problem. Either you're, we don't want to just communicate for communication. We have a purpose. We want to engage people. We want people to buy our products. We want people to, trust us. We want people to, be loyal to us as employees and go that extra mile. And so we have to communicate the value and the reason that people should be engaged with you and should trust you and should want to go the extra mile for you. And so that's what good messaging does. And so you really have to have a conversation inside the organization to answer these questions and then develop the appropriate words to articulate these ideas. But you really have to get at the core of what the the enterprise is all about and the problems that it's solving and the value that it's delivering
Now,
and wants to deliver.
Now, can you give us an example of either a message that you help to extract or articulate from a customer or a model message from a public company that has a clear, concise message?
Well, that's a good. I mean, there are lots of good examples of companies that have done this well. I mean, Apple does it well. Starbucks does it well. In terms of companies and organizations that we've worked with, one example that comes to mind is an organization that we worked with that is involved in tackling homelessness, and they had a message that basically initially they were solving, they were helping chronically homeless individuals, and they were providing them with food and services and so on. In the course of their own strategic planning, they decided, they took on a bigger role. They said, we're not just going to treat the symptoms of homelessness, we're going to end it. Okay? And they had done some strategic planning to identify that this is where they were going. And that was great. We're going to end homelessness. We're going to end chronic homelessness. And we can do it, and we know we can do it. Well, the challenge was that while those who were involved in the strategic planning process understood where all this was coming from, their donors, their staff, their partners externally, there was a big gap between where the insiders were and everybody else was. Well, how are you going to do this? And so we were brought in to help them come up with messaging platform, a positioning platform. And what we were up against several other firms, and what they told us was the reason that we were selected was they knew that with the other firms they would get a messaging platform, but they also knew with us, because of our unique process, that we would deliver to them the ability to have the kinds of conversations they needed to have internally to get everybody to embrace it and understand it. And so this was a several month process where we had a number of workshops inside, and then out of that, and from we talked to external folks, and we did a lot of interviews and so on, and we brought all of that together, and they came up with a message about guiding people home, and providing them with the dignity and the belonging that they needed to guide them home so that they could end chronic homelessness. And that worked very effectively for them, and they were able to increase their donation by 25%. Yeah, in a very short period of time right after that messaging went into play.
Now, typically with marketing campaigns, there are test markets where companies will test a message, a theme before they roll it out. Was this something, or is this something that you recommend to your clients, to test the message before they actually roll it out?
We do recommend that, and what's so great now is that because of all the digital platforms, it's very easy to test certain messages with different segments of your audiences and see how they play, and see what's resonating. You might test 3 or 4 versions of a message and see which one seems to pull best. So yes, we do recommend doing that and testing it out, because sometimes the words that you think, that you find very effective may have a double meaning for somebody else. And so it's really important to test that. There's a balancing act, I think, between, you want to test, but then you also just need to get out there. So there's you can, it's like planning to plan. You can test and test and test and test, but at some point you need to just go with it.
That makes sense. Now, the title of your book that will be coming out soon, which I love this, just because you have a mouth does not mean that you're communicating or that we are communicating. What is the basic components and elements of that book?
So basically, what we find so often in organizations is that people think they're communicating because they've sent an email or they had one conversation, and at the heart of it, the communication is really one-sided. I've done my job. I told you. I sent the email. We had that conversation, and they haven't spent the time to understand that communication is a two-way street. So you have to make sure, did the person hear you? Did they get your email? Did they understand your intent? Did they read the email or hear the conversation the way you thought that they did? So many times, we say things or we put out memoranda, within companies, and the recipient of the communication doesn't understand it the way that the sender thought they should. And so there's really, focusing on what I call almost like the airline pilot mode of communication. I'm one of those geeks. I used to love to listen to the flight transmissions whenever I would fly long, international flights. I don't think they do that anymore. Okay. But you would hear, permission, a request permission to go to 38,000 feet, and then be Roger that, permission granted, Roger that. So there's this back and forth to make sure, I got you. Because if you didn't, you're going to have a crash. Your plane could crash, right? And so we don't do that in our own communications in business at all. We're busy. We don't take the time to make sure that people on the other end have really heard us and understood us, and that we get the right and that we continually ask for feedback. As well, which can be a scary thing. So that's and so there's a lot of books that talk about this on an interpersonal level, but we're talking about it from the perspective of within organizations and then organization to organization, in terms of your organizational communication. Okay,
with your client base, what does your client base look like, or better yet, who are you targeting to utilize your services?
So for us, the best kind of client is, so if it's a company, maybe they have anywhere from 10 to 80 million in revenue, and they're looking to double that or grow it, and they're trying to build their presence, build their visibility, or expand their presence and visibility into other markets. And many times these companies have been kind of operating, they're not startups anymore, but they've been operating almost, a little bit ahead of a startup. They may not have formalized communication systems. They may not have they may have a marketing director, but not necessarily a communications department.
Okay.
And then for nonprofits, the same thing, though the revenue level may be a little bit lower. But it's really about organizations that want to grow and grow their reach and their influence. Working with really big companies, it's harder to have the impact that we have worked with Fortune 500 companies, and we love working with those companies, but it's a different animal.
Now, if in 60 seconds or less, is there a message that you would like to convey to the listeners that you would like to leave them with? If they don't hear anything else, I would like you to know this.
Communications is not a soft skill. It is an important management skill, and it's often, everybody talks about communications, but people don't do it very well. And it's something that organizations and individuals need to pay a lot more attention to, because it's the glue that brings us all together.
Okay, great. Now, if the listeners would like to contact your organization and find out more about what you do or utilize your services, how can they do that?
They can call us at 301-248-8255. 340-6831, or find us on the web at www.waingergroup.com, and Wainger is spelled Wainger, and then group.com. We're on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at Liz Wainger, and LinkedIn. There's many ways that you can reach out to us.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. That was very exciting, dynamic information that you shared with myself and our listeners, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. This is a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.